everybody, welcome to Rachel's Reviews, and we're so excited today because we are here to talk animation, which is one of my favorite things to talk about. And we're doing another episode or Like That, Watch This series. We did one before where we give suggestions if you like a particular movie. Here's some similar movies that you would probably like. So it's going to be fun. And I'm film critic Rachel Wagner, and Mat Brunet's here.
Hey everybody, how you all doing? And how are you doing, Rachel?
I'm doing pretty good, pretty good. Spring, and I had my wisdom teeth out last week, which was wild.
Oh dang.
Um, all four. But it was kind of funny because I didn't realize that I went to like the posh wisdom teeth place. They treated me really nice, and they even gave me a Minky Couture blanket to take home when I left, which are very expensive. Minky Coutures are really nice. I was like, ooh, because it was just the same as it wasn't like more expensive for me. I'm sure the insurance is loving that, but anyway, it was really funny because when I had them put on the Broadway, the show tunes, whatever
Yeah.
playlist, and when the doctor came in, that's when Defying Gravity started
Oh my
playing.
god, especially nowadays, of course, like you might as well jam to that.
Unlimited. It was really funny.
No,
um,
I will say I do get how you feel. When I was a teenager, I actually got all four of my wisdom teeth removed, and yeah, that
yeah.
was a bit of a challenge there. But I will say, with your blanket, you definitely got a big reward for that trial that you went through.
Yeah, I'm telling y'all, if you're in Utah Surgical Arts, that's the place to go. They treated me great. It was really nice.
Absolutely.
So anyway, it's been a wild couple of weeks, and I mean, I love any chance I have to chat with you always, and we had such a good time with that, like that. Watch this that we had done before, and I can't even remember what. Oh, it was Collider. It was a Collider list. This is what we were going with
Yes.
last time. Yeah, yeah. And that was so fun. And so I thought, maybe we should do it again. And we got a lot of good comments and good responses. And so what we're going with now is actually Rolling Stone's top 40 animated films of all time article that they did. And we ended up with actually 33 on their list because I took out all the shorts, and I also took out just a couple that I hadn't seen. I didn't have time to to watch before recording this. So it ended up with 33 in this ranking. So that's where we got it from.
Yeah. Honestly, it was an interesting list that
Yeah.
it's technically more like a top 40 cartoons and like seeing those added into the mix. And even like, I'll say now, like from the stuff that we got, like there are a few that are pretty surprising that are not here. Like, honestly, like from your list, I was kind of shocked to see it was like, wait, where's the Lion King? We don't have Lion King in this?
Yeah, you're right. It is a non-Disney heavy list. Like what I mean, there's some, but I would say it's I mean, you got, let's see, one, two of the Disney canon. There are
Like you got like some of the stand-ins that are like
five.
expected to be there in the best of the best. Like of course you got
Yeah, there's
like
only five from the Disney canon on this
yeah.
list.
Oh my god, I just realized actually, wait a minute, not just the Lion King, they don't even have Beauty and the Beast, I
You
think.
know, they don't have Beauty and the Beast. The Little Mermaid is the only, I think, from the Disney canon I mean, from the Renaissance that they have. The only ones from the Disney canon are Fantasia, Snow White, Pinocchio, The Little Mermaid, and
I think
what
that
was the
might
other
be it.
one?
Well, I mean technically there are also
Fantasia, Snow White,
yeah,
The Little Mermaid, Pinocchio.
Pinocchio.
Is that so? There's just four? What
Well,
was that?
I guess this is not even counting. Oh no, Bambi.
Oh,
Bambi's
Bambi,
also
yeah,
here.
Bambi. So there's just those five
But
out
then again,
of
I
out of
guess this
40.
is
That's I think that's on the small side, but it gives us a chance to talk about a lot of fun, films. So it's
but
fun.
I guess this is not even counting like the Pixar films because there's still like a whole bunch that are
Yeah,
from
there's a bunch of
Pixar.
Pixar. Uh-huh. Yeah. And I tried with my picks for the suggestions. I tried to go out of off franchise for the most part. So like if it was a Leica movie, I tried to not pick a Leica as my suggestion, or a Studio Ghibli. I tried to not pick a Studio Ghibli. And so some of mine are more reaches than others, but it's all right. It's all in fun.
I'll say I do have a little bit of a mix. I will
Yeah.
have some that feel like are a little too obvious to go in that direction. And
Yeah.
then there are some that I'm going to do my best and I'll probably repeat. All right, listen, listen. Here's the thing. Now, listen.
Are you a fan of Rachel's reviews? Do you look forward to Family Movie Night, Female Film Critics panels, or the Talking Disney podcast? If so, please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a Patreon. As a patron, you get to access monthly events such as the watch-alongs and Q&As, where you get to talk to stars and find out the behind the scenes of the movie making industry. And you can pick what I review for Family Movie Night or even become a guest on the podcast. Podcasts and YouTube channels are expensive, and I really, really could use your help. I would so appreciate it. You also get to be a member of the Facebook group where we talk about all the films that we're seeing, and we have so much fun. Go to patreon.com/hallmarkies and select one of the Rachel's fan tiers. That's patreon.com/hallmarkies.
All right. Well, let's dive in. Let's talk about it. So the number 33 on our list is Rango. And I was trying to think of, it's such a unique film, and a lot of these are so unique that it is hard to think of one that's like really similar. But the one that I think I could have picked Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. I think that that has some Western elements, a little bit of a feel. But just the sarcasm, I picked My Neighbors the Yamadas. Because I feel like there's a little bit of a dry sense of humor to Rango and a dry sense of humor to My Neighbors the Yamadas. That I think if you really liked the humor in Rango, that you probably would like the humor in Yamadas.
All right. For me, honestly, I thought about the main aspect that this is a straight up Western. And I mean, you brought up
Yeah,
a very good point with like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish having like a very Western feel to it. But Rango is probably the strongest example of an animated Western movie
yeah,
that's like very unapologetically Western with like a Western town and the sheriff and cowboys and stuff like that.
yeah,
So my pick, I went with An American Tail, Fievel Goes West, because
yeah,
that movie is also another animated feature in which not only is it another straightforward Western movie, but it's also animals in a
yeah,
Western environment. So it does share a lot of those kinds of similarities, and not
yeah.
to
It's a good
mention,
pick.
yeah, and not to mention how both of them, in their own way, they have very strong animation. Like Rango has phenomenal CG animation. Even like a lot of the character designs are
Yeah,
phenomenal. Even to the point, like I always felt like Rango is one of the closest things we got for a computer animated feature or just an animated film in general to feel like a Disney ride, kind of like the Pirates of the Caribbean or the Haunted Mansion, where like you barely know any of these characters, but just by looking at their crazy designs, that just tells you everything about who they are.
yeah,
And with An American Tail, Fievel Goes West, while not CG, it is a hand-drawn animated feature, but the animation is still beautiful to look at. A bit
yeah,
different than what Don Bluth did with the original film, but still very strong on its own.
yeah. And underrated for its music. I love the music in Five Goes West. The Dreams to Dream. I did that in
Yeah.
a recital once and I just think that is a beautiful song.
Oh
And
yeah, like
yeah,
especially when when Fievel's sister is like presented in a
mm,
show, like with
yeah,
all the cats just
dreams.
watching, and like that was like one of the like I'll admit that was like one of the highlights
Yeah,
of the movie.
yeah, definitely. Well, good pick. All right, so next is Coraline. And this one, it was interesting. I was thinking about like a strong young woman that and to have like a little bit of a darker tone. And so I went with Wolfwalkers.
Ah,
Yeah, that I mean, there's it's not as dark, it's not as horror steeped as Coraline is, but it does have its darker moments and talking about fascism and talking about these things in Wolfwalkers, and of course has the two young women in Wolfwalkers. But yeah, so I think if you haven't seen it, if you missed it, I mean it's a wonderful film, Wolfwalkers, and I think and I mean Coraline visually it's so unique, and I do think that they even designed a new way to do the animation in Wolfwalkers to
oh
for
yes.
yeah for the transformations. I forget what how they had a term for it they called it, but anyway they actually even came up with a new way to animate the sequences, and so I think it's visually striking in a different way than Coraline, but also visually striking. So I think if you like Coraline, you might like Wolfwalkers.
Yeah, I mean, Wolfwalkers is absolutely
Yeah,
tremendous. It's beautiful. Like all,
yeah,
it's one of my favorite animated films of the decade. And
yeah,
I know with Wolfwalkers, they went a little extra, even like compared to their previous Cartoon Saloon's previous features like
yeah,
Kells and Song of the Sea. I think like a part of it is because they did actually use some CG to help create the visuals, and part of that is with the transformation sequences. So I
yeah,
think it's because like with some of the new tools that they use is why it feels more visually striking than even compared to the previous Cartoon Saloon films.
yeah,
Now,
definitely.
for my choice, honestly, I decided to go in the direction that since Coraline was directed by Henry Selick, I decided to go with another Henry Selick picture, Wendell and Wild. And I know there might be a few that are, or there are some who may not be a big fan of the feature. I don't know if I remember, I don't know if you were a fan of this
Yeah.
one.
Yeah,
Um,
I found it quite disappointing, but it's not like awful, but I was very excited for it. So it was not what I hoped it would be, but yeah, I'd have to see it again to kind of remember kind of what I was feeling, but yeah, I found it quite disappointing, but
That's fair. But for me, Wendell and Wild, I personally really enjoyed this film,
uh-huh.
and like thinking about like how it is with Coraline, like there's a lot of similar themes to it. You got the dark tone that is in there, that's a little bit like light horror that is featured. Of course, this is another stop motion feature, and the way that they play with the animation, especially with making it more stylized does feel pretty, and it's another feature that definitely looks stunning, but more in its own way. And not to mention, like you also got a strong female protagonist and a young female protagonist also with Wendell and Wild.
Yeah, I can see that.
So I feel like it is kind of a smooth transition where
Yeah,
people who do enjoy Coraline, I feel like they can also get into Wendell and Wild because of
yeah.
like the similar tones with how it's from the same director, the same kind of horror feel to it, and also a bit of a similar protagonist as well.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. All right, next we have Charlotte's Web. And I was trying to think of something that feels like homey and comforting and simple, and like Charlotte's Web. This doesn't have the music that Charlotte's Web have, which is so much fun, the Sherman Brothers songs.
Oh yeah.
But I went with Ethel and Ernest, which is a very sweet little animated film. And it's just about this couple. It's about the parents of Raymond Briggs, and he did the animation. The story is based on it, but it's the same team that did the animation for the Snowman, and
Oh
in
yes, yes,
that
yes.
feel. So it's a very sweet, charming, wholesome story of this couple and they're following them. And it's I forget when it's. I mean, I think it starts in World War II. Yeah, it's been a
Ah
bit since I've
yeah.
seen some of these that we're going to talk about. It so it starts with their first meeting in 1928, and goes through to their passings in 1971. So yeah, it's a definitely worth checking out.
Although I will say, if I remember from Ethel and Ernest, like, I'm not going to deny you are correct that there's a lot of very sweet moments, but then after the war element comes in, that's when things go from sweet to just pretty depressing. And I mean, like, Charlotte's Web does have its sad moments, but Ethel and Ernest, it's like by the end of it, it's like, ooh boy, that's just rough.
Yeah,
you,
there's
you
some sad stuff.
I think honestly, if you're gonna go and watch Ethel and Ernest, do so. It's a lovely film, but at the
Yeah.
same time, you might need to pick me up after that.
Yeah, I can see that. It's been a bit since I've seen it, but yeah, that would make sense. I mean, life has its ups and downs. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, that is true.
But yeah, I mean, in Charlotte's Web, it does get pretty sad at the
Yeah,
end.
no, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, for me, however, I decided to go with Horton Hears a Who. And that's mainly because this is another animated feature that is based on a classics children's book, which
Mm.
in this case is from Dr. Seuss. And I feel like there are some similar themes that it has with Charlotte's Web. Number one, you got two friends in which you got one that is an animal and the other is like a very small character, which
Yeah.
Charlotte's Web has Charlotte, and Horton Hears a
Oh.
Who has the
Oh yeah.
mayor of Whoville. and
That makes
also
sense.
and also I do find that its message is very similar, where Charlotte's Web is about how these friends are helping each other out in order to make them feel like their lives matter. Like Charlotte would do her best to go and present how Wilbur is actually a special pig, that he really does stand out and helps people notice that Wilbur is actually this extraordinary pig. Whereas Horton Hears a Who, of course, the message is a person's a person, no matter how small. So it's about it pretty much shares a similar theme of looking out for others. So that's why I feel like if you love classic children's literature being adapted to animated films, something like Charlotte's Web definitely is a great choice. But a great transition to that is Horton Hears a Who, which
Yeah,
I don't know
that
if
makes
this is
sense.
I don't know if this would be a hot take, but I still stand by that Horton Hears a Who is so far the best movie based on a Dr. Seuss book.
Oh yeah. I mean, unless you're counting shorts. Yeah, I agree.
Shorts and TV specials are kind of their own thing.
Yeah.
I mean, like
Yeah.
legitimate
Yeah. Yeah. I
a
know.
feature film. So
Definitely.
far, Horton's on top.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. All right. Next, we have Grave of the Fireflies. And so I was trying to think of what is a war themed movie that with a similar tone, similar feel, animated film. I went with In This Corner of the World. And this is an anime film where it follows a woman who gets basically in an arranged marriage and she gets sent to Hiroshima in the 1940s, and of course, we all know what happened in Hiroshima, and so she survives the bombing, and it's a very some people would think this is boring. It's a very slice of life. You're following this woman. Like there's a whole long segment where she's just making rice, and at the time they would puff up the rice so that it expanded so that it could feed more people. They could make it one thing of rice last for much longer because they did that. So it goes through this whole process of her making rice and just things like that. But I kind of love that about it. I love stepping in the shoes of somebody from a different time and place and really feeling like I got to know her. And I did get to interview Suno Kanabuchi when it came out for Rotoscopers. That was pretty cool. And he talked about like his process of of things like the rice and how important it was for him, the research he did, the things like that is, and you can feel that care in the movie. And the love story that is actually quite sweet and tender that she develops between her and her arranged husband. And yeah, so it's a beautiful movie, and I think it obviously has the war similarity with Grave of the Fireflies, and it's also very sad, like at Grave of the Fireflies at times. But it also has like a tenderness, I think the both films have, and the animation is very similar too, I think, in the two. So yeah, a lot of people, I feel, I have so many people tell me that, oh, I don't like anime. And I think when they're saying that most of the time, they're thinking Pokemon, they're thinking even
Mhm.
Studio Ghibli, Spirited Away, things like that, which, those are great. Digimon, stuff like that. And I wish I could get them to just try a movie like this, like Grave of the Fireflies or In This Corner of the World, because I mean, it couldn't be more different than those. That this is
Oh
a,
yeah.
this is very adult, sweet, tender characters. There's nothing supernatural or anything like that. I don't know. I think that if they were to give something like this a chance, they probably would, or they might like it.
No, I do understand what you mean. I feel like within this corner of the world, it's very much a very similar argument with Ethel and Ernest. It's a
Yeah.
very sweet film. It has it has a lot of heartfelt moments, but at the same time, you look at the setting and it's like, oh, they're in Hiroshima. Oh, it's in the 1940s. I'm sure nothing wrong is going to happen there.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah,
Yeah.
like it's another one that maybe you would need a bit of a pick me up afterwards.
Yeah. But that's
Afterwards,
true for
but
Grave of the Fireflies.
yeah, oh, Grave of the Fireflies, absolutely. I mean, it pretty much starts off establishing like, once upon a time,
Oh
here
my
are these two
gosh.
little children. They're dead. Here's the
Yeah.
story of how they messed up their lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, but for real though, no, a wonderful pick. And for me, however, I kind of stuck with the Studio Ghibli realm, but I decided to go with The Wind Rises.
Yeah.
Now, initially, I thought about, oh, how about I talk about The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, considering that it's
Mm.
another movie from Isao Takahata. But then I decided to switch it to The Wind Rises, mainly because this is another movie that is set in World War II, and
Yeah.
you do get a bit of the similar themes um, with what you mentioned within this corner of the world, where you do have a lot of like heartfelt and tender moments, especially with the main character, but especially with The Wind Rises, it's actually Miyazaki's tribute to Isao Takahata and with his features as well, especially when going into Japanese history, when going
Yeah.
into like the World War II elements, similar to Grave of the Fireflies. I will say it is definitely more uplifting than Grave of the Fireflies. It doesn't get as somber, even though it does have
Yeah.
its fair share of some pretty dark and sad moments as well. But The Wind Rises is basically the closest that Hayao Miyazaki got to making a feature that is similar to Isao Takahata. So
Yeah.
I think it's more in general, like if you enjoy Grave of the Fireflies or the works of Takahata, a lot like with like, and this even includes like his other films like My Name Are the Yamadas or Princess Kaguya, then I think you'll also enjoy The Wind Rises as well.
And I think it's an interesting movie about dreams because here his dream is to design airplanes, but he kind of does it, but it also leads to war and death, and so like
Mhm.
there's this that there's this dark side to his somewhat seemingly benign dream that he has, but things get
Yeah,
complicated in when you become an adult sometimes more than we
yeah.
thought.
It's also worth noting that this is why The Wind Rises is often considered a controversial feature, and that's mainly because like it actually is a kind of a biography in a way, because the
Oh,
main character in the film is actually a real person.
Yeah,
Like,
but I think it embraces that complicated nature of what like that's the whole theme of the movie is like, oh my gosh, he has this dream, but should he have that dream?
and that's why it's controversial. It's
Yeah,
mainly because that they took this real
interesting.
guy and they kind of romanticize him, despite the fact that his creations have led to a lot of devastation,
Yeah.
especially contributing to airplanes that would be used uh, for the Axis.
Yeah. I don't think they romanticize it too much, but they just present it. This is this person, this is what happened. And
No,
so I think it's interesting. I mean, there is a romance in the story, but yeah, I like that. I like that they're not afraid of the complicated legacy of the character.
no, I mean, I get it. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, I love The Wind Rises as
Yeah,
well. Like,
yeah,
I thought
yeah.
it would be worth mentioning
Sure,
how
sure.
there is that element of controversy
Totally.
that people would bring up.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, next we have Fantastic Planet. And I was trying to think of, sci-fi, something that was primarily, music, that didn't have a lot of dialogue. And so I went with Interstellar 555. And this is pretty cool anime that it's been a bit since I saw this, but I remember being very impressed with it. And it has similar kind of creatures as in Fantastic Planet. And of course, you've got the incredible Daft Punk score in this that is very memorable. And yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a cool little interesting movie. So if you like Fantastic Planet, check out Interstellar 5555.
Yeah, I will say with Fantastic Planet, one thing that stands out to me is that it's a weird
It is
feature.
weird.
It's a very strange one. So that's kind of the direction that I went. And I will admit, because of that, it is a little bit difficult to try to figure out, okay, like what other movie feels
Yeah.
absolutely weird but really worth watching. So I went with Son of the White Mare. Now,
Yeah.
this one is a lot more fantasy oriented. This one feels more like a legitimate European fairy tale, but I will say it's through the animation style that it is very unique, very similar to how Fantastic Planet has a very unique style of animation that is incorporated to it. So you do get that same strange, almost psychedelic feel when watching it, but it's still great on its own. It still has a very compelling story. Again, like
Yeah.
a very classic fairy tale tone to it, but still quite a splendor to go and watch.
Yeah.
So that's why for me, like I would argue, it's like if you enjoy like crazy weird movies like Planet, Son of the White Mare is also a
Yeah.
great one to include.
It's a good choice, yeah. And a lot of these that we've talked about, we've done episodes on my obscure animation series. My friend Stanford and I, like we've done one on In This Corner of the World. We did Interstellar. We did Son of the White Mare. We did The Wind Rises. We did Ethel in Earnest. So if you want more of an in-depth deep dive into some of these movies, then you just check that out. They're pretty fun. All right, next we have Secret of Nim, and it's such a unique film. It's tricky. There's not that many movies about moms, so I was trying to think
Yeah.
like, what is one that has at least a similar tone, and so I actually went with Watership Down. Was made right around the same time. I think it has a similar sort of dark tone to it. There's a certain gloominess, I think, in both movies. That the animation style, I think, is pretty similar between the two. Obviously, one is about rats, one is about rabbits, but I think they're pretty close.
No, I understand. Like, basically, both of them have the theme of like it looks like an animated kids film, but they
Yeah,
pretty much present how nature can be scary, yo.
yeah,
But
it's true.
honestly, I tried to do the same thing. I tried to think about, okay, is there an animated feature where the mom is the main protagonist, similar to Mrs. Brisby? But when I saw your suggestion of Watership Down, I honestly decided to take a similar road, and I went with the Plague Dogs, which coincidentally it actually came out at the same not at the same time, but during I believe during the same year as The Secret of Nim, in which it came out in 1982. And well, what do you know? It's this is also brought to us by Martin Rosen, and I decided to also go with Plague Dogs mainly because of
The
the mainly
experimentation.
yeah, like
Yeah,
basically,
yeah, that makes sense.
it's a whole movie about lab animals in a way, and the secret, like the rats of Nim, came to be because they were lab animals as well. But with the plague dogs as well, yes, it does also share another theme of how it is pretty dark at times. Like some scenes that they could either be pretty either depressing or like terrifying, but I will say with the Plague Dogs, similar to Watership Down, there should be a little bit of a warning where like it kind of doubles down on that fear aspect compared to the Secret of Nim, because at least Nim can have a few moments where they can lighten things up. Like they would bring in Jeremy to come in and like add
Yeah,
in a bit
that's
of
true. That's a good
add
point.
in a bit of comedy to make it a little bit more fun to watch. Whereas Plague Dogs, on the other hand, yeah, good luck with that, pal.
Woo!
You ain't gonna get much comedy on this.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. All right. And you know what? I just thought of if you wanted the mother angle, Wolf Children would actually be a really good pick as
Oh,
far as
that's
a, yeah,
true.
I didn't think of that, but yeah, that would be a good one that's also about a mom. Um, all right. Next up, we have Up. And I was trying to think of what is a movie about a unlikely duo going on a journey. And this one is even also in South America, which is kind of fun. So I went with The Emperor's New Groove. They're very different in tone. Obviously, Emperor's New Groove is a lot sillier than Up, but it has its silly moments with the dogs and the stuff like that. So I think that it's a decent swap out.
Yeah, I do see a bit of the similarities. Honestly, I kind of went with another direction with my film. I'll admit it's not as good as either Up or The Emperor's New Groove, but it is still fun to watch, in my
Yeah,
opinion. I decided to go with Rio
yeah,
because I decided to go in the jungle aspect of it, and the more I think about it, the more I realize, oh yeah, there are a lot of those similarities because on top of the fact that a lot of it is technically set in the well, not all a lot of it, but like some parts of it is set in the jungle, but at the same time, or in this case, the Amazon. But it's also set in South America, where it is in Brazil, specifically in Rio de Janeiro. And technically, you got these two characters that are going on this adventure together, and they're kind of like stuck together. Or in the case of Blue and Jewel, they're literally chained up together, trying to figure out like how to get out of their chain.
yeah.
So I think from and not to mention like Up also has some very beautiful music by Michael Giacchino, and Rio also like has some very standout music as well. So
It's true.
if you enjoy South American adventures featuring birds like with Up, then I think you'll
That's
have
true.
fun with Rio. Not to
Yeah.
mention like all the different colors, because like
Uh,
you think of Kevin and how her plumage is like very colorful, and like you'll get a
that's
lot of
true.
that with Rio.
Yeah, that's true. All right, next we have Howl's Moving Castle. So I was trying to think of what is a fantasy story that is a little bit unpredictable, a little strange, some unusual elements, things like that. And so I went with Suzume, with sort of the fantasy story about the boy turned into a chair and the journey that she goes on. The also has young female character goes on a journey. I think that they're pretty similar. So if you miss Suzume and you like House Moving Castle, give it a shot.
Yeah, and not to mention with Suzume, this is from the same guy that brought us
Your
Your
name,
Name
yeah,
and and Weathering with You. So
yeah,
definitely a strong choice. For me, I didn't go into the fantasy element. There is a bit of fantasy to it, but I decided to go with The Glassworker. This is noted to be Pakistan's first hand drawn animated feature, and it has a very, very strong Studio Ghibli feel. Like you can
Mm,
easily tell that the influence is from Studio Ghibli, and I wouldn't say that they got it 100%, but this is actually an incredible attempt, and not to mention the soundtrack. I think they nailed it. It is phenomenal.
mhm.
And with the Glassworker, you also got kind of like the pairing with the two main characters, like a little bit of like a sort of romance that's going on. Which I know with Howl's Moving Castle, it's like very straightforward as something that is romantic. But with the Glassworker, on the other hand, like it's kind of a friendship that kind of like almost turns into a romance in the way, but like it's seeing that relationship evolve throughout the feature that makes it pretty
Oh.
interesting. So
I I haven't seen that one. I need to catch up on it.
yeah, like I'm sure like there might be some streaming service somewhere that would actually go and present the Glassworker, but I think like if you enjoy the Studio Ghibli films like Howl's Moving Castle, the Glassworker is another one I
Yeah,
highly recommend to go and see.
cool. All right, next we have the Triplets of Belleville. And I was trying to think of something that had like a similar tone and feel. This is a totally different style of animation, but I went with Memoir of a Snail. I feel like
Okay.
they have like somewhat similar tones, and they're a little bit unconventional, I would say, both of them. So that's where I went. I think Memoir of a Snail is probably a little darker than triplets,
Oh yeah.
but still, I don't know. I feel like someone that loves triplets would probably like Memoir.
Yeah, I'll confess I kind of went onto the easy route with my suggestion. I decided to go with The Illusionist. This is
Hmm.
another animated film brought to us by Sylvain Chomet, so you do get that gorgeous 2D animation that he
Yeah,
delivered on Triplets of Belleville. Not to mention that this is another movie that is also mostly silent, in which
that's true.
it's mostly the visuals that carry the story instead of the dialogue. Very similar to the Triplets of Belleville, and I will say the tone might be a little bit more melancholy than Belleville. Very similar to your suggestion with Memoir of a Snail, where it's about this magician, but the time period, however, is going from it's pretty much moving away from his act, where being a magician on stage is not really that cool anymore, and people have moved on to other forms of entertainment like movies. So it's
Yeah,
so like the setting is like a little bit after the turn of the century, but basically it's about this magician whom his craft, like not him necessarily, but his craft has passed its prime, and he's just trying to do what he can in order to I guess in a way keep the magic alive, even though like sometimes it can be difficult. And and even
yeah,
though there is like there is that one girl who still believes in his magic, still though it's just it's just tough for him to like get by when
yeah.
the entertainment landscape has has been changing, and he's having a hard time to keep up with it.
Well, next up, we have Persepolis. And I actually went with Flea because I just thought that the two movies are quite similar as far as sharing the immigrant experience and what it's like to be an outsider, especially when she's in Germany. You know, her that part of Persepolis, and what that is like. And Flea, of course, about an Afghan refugee immigrant and his experience. And there's also they're both they're both non-traditional, I guess. Which is and how they fit into their cultures and that they were raised in at least. So that's what I went with was Flea.
No, a great choice, and I love Flea. Not to
Yeah.
mention there is the similarity where they're both biographies in a way, but
Yeah, that's true.
told in different styles. Like with Persepolis, it was based on a graphic novel that was based on the author's real life story, and Flea is actually an animated documentary.
Yeah.
Now, I'll admit with mine, this is another one that was very difficult to try to figure out, like,
Uh,
what can I do to recommend Persepolis? And I decided to go with Ralph Bakshi's American Pop. And the reason why I decided to go with that is mainly because how with both Persepolis and American Pop, they're kind of slice of life stories. And not to mention that they also have the theme of war and how that can carry on over to someone's life. But with American Pop, however, this is actually more of a generational story. It doesn't just tell the life of one person because from there you actually see how the lives get passed on from one person after another and how the former would go and ultimately influence the other. But still, just on the element of characters trying to live their lives, trying to get into the cultures that they're into, as well as the element of war that is presented and how to survive through that. Or in American Pop's case, some did not. I would say that honestly, like maybe that has some similarities to Persepolis. Again, this is one
yeah.
that I will confess it's quite a stretch, but I will admit
I had ne-
it was
I'm
tough to
glad
try
you
to figure
mentioned
it
it
out.
because I didn't know about this. I mean, I've seen some other Bashkis, but I didn't know about this American Pop, so
No,
I'm
American
excited to
Pop,
check it out.
it's a very fascinating one and a lot more different than some of the stuff that he is known for, like with Fritz the Cat or Coonskin and
Yeah.
Heavy Traffic. This one, it's not to mention the animation style. Safe to say that it is very realistic because it's not motion capture, but it's very rotoscoped. It's very
Yeah,
much
that's what he did.
it's a
Yeah.
lot closer to the style that he did with his Lord of the Rings movie. But this is one that I would say, no, it's worth checking out for sure.
Huh, cool. I'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's Summer Husband, a new novel by Amy Lorowitz. For readers drawn to heartfelt, witty stories of rediscovery and second chances at romance, Summer Husband, a novel by Amy Lorowitz, follows a mom who rediscovers herself at sleepaway camp. Between late night secrets, a tempting flirtation, and a trial separation, Lori Kramer's summer turns into a lesson in love, friendship, and finding yourself again when you least expect it. Perfect for summer reading lists and reviews. Get Summer Husband today wherever you purchase your books or use the affiliate link below. That's Summer Husband, a novel by Amy Lorowitz. It's available now. Good. All right, next we have The Incredibles. So I was thinking, what is a superhero movie with a kind of similar sense of humor? And so I went with Megamind. I feel like they have like a similar kind of sarcasm, similar tone, similar style of animation.
Yeah, like very much like it's all super, it's very much superheroes, like that prominent theme that is going around. For me, I kind of went with a similar route. I went with Big Hero 6.
Yeah.
Like if you enjoy seeing a variety of different superpowers, kind of like with what the Incredibles displayed, and especially the world building of like, you're in this world filled with superheroes going on. Big Hero 6 is another one, especially and this is not to mention where it's kind of set in this like fictionalized world that is made to have superheroes, where The Incredibles has this 1950s, 1960s aesthetic that where superheroes were actually very commonplace. Big Hero 6 is set in San Francisco, so it's basically like you got the combined elements of Japan with Tokyo and American culture as well with San Francisco. And like while it does lean more like in the science element with Big Hero 6, it is still like straight up a superhero flick. So if you enjoy The Incredibles and you like animated superhero features, Big Hero 6 is another recommendation right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. All right. Next, we have Waltz with Bashir. And I actually went with a little independent movie called Funan. And this is it's similar to Waltz with Bashir in the sense that they're both about war and the trauma of war. This is about a mother. It could be there's another one about a mother, but during the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia and the after effect of that whole conflict, and she's trying to find her 4-year-old son, and it's a beautiful, well-made, a hidden, I think a hidden gem. More people should see it. It's really quite good.
I'm honestly not that familiar with Funan. I should
Hmm.
actually check that out. I am
We
curious.
Yeah, it's director Dennis Du is his name, and we did it for our obscure animation. We have an episode, um, and it's really quite moving.
Hmm, interesting. I'll
Yeah.
need to check this one out.
Hmm.
Now, okay, I will confess, I'll say now, this is another one that I find to be one of the hardest to try to find a recommendation,
Yeah.
especially with the fact that this list already has a good chunk of the
Right.
animated war movies. It's like, okay, Waltz with Bashir. All right, let's go with Grave of the Firefly. Crap!
Yeah,
Okay,
it's true.
never mind.
You're
Never
right.
mind. Okay, let's go with Persepolis. Crap! So
Yeah.
honestly, I decided to go with a different direction, and this one, again, this will be another massive stretch. I decided to go with Disney's Tarzan. And it's not because of the war element, but it's mainly because of how Waltz with Bashir is a story about the main character trying to figure out who he is and uncovering pieces of his past in order to find out his true, in order to find out a bit of his identity, a bit of like who was he before that whole thing. And with Waltz with Bashir, I will say, like, that one, as it is more war oriented, like, it is a bit more, well, maybe depressing, like, is a harsh word. I know I've already used it
Yeah.
before, but, like, it is a lot more melancholy. And it's like, when you do find out, like, what he has done during the war, it's like, oh, that's why your memory has suppressed it. I see now. No, but still a wonderful film. I love Waltz with Bashir.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in Tarzan, though, it is a little bit similar in that sense, where the movie is about trying to figure out who you are and who are you now. Because with Tarzan, like for a while, he tries to figure out why is he so different from all the other gorillas? Like
It's true.
why is he a human? So from there, like as he would discover like other people, like when he meets Jane, Professor Porter, and Clayton, from there, that's when he starts to try to figure out what's his identity. Does he identify himself more as a human or does he identify as a gorilla? So again, I understand if this is another one that I feel like it's a bit of a stretch, but I feel like in terms of discovering your own self identity, I feel like it does have that similarity to Waltz with Bashir.
Yeah. All right. Next, we have Bambi. And so I was trying to think, what's a movie about sort of the life of an animal that has a somewhat similar tone? I went with Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron. You see him from birth all the way into being a grown up, and how he's affected by man. And I mean, obviously, Bambi is much more of a classic, especially with the music and the animation, the incredible animation. But Spirit's pretty solid, and I think it has a similar tone.
Yeah, I do see that, definitely. With my choice, I would say that I pretty much went with Dino Bambi. I went with The Land Before Time because this
It's
is
true.
another one
Dino
in
Baby.
which, like, this is about a young creature, which in this case is a dinosaur, and even though Bambi is more a bit of an animal slice of life movie, The Land Before Time does have a bit more of a linear plot where it's about like these group of children dinosaurs trying to find their way to make it to the Great Valley and reunite with their family. But in the case of The Land Before Time, there is that element of like, this coming of age aspect. I think it's the best way to put it, where similar to Bambi, Littlefoot would have to go through like not just some elements where like he would have some friendships, like meeting up with other dinosaurs, like with Petrie, Sarah, Ducky, and Spike, but also some hardships as well, including losing, how to keep going through life even though he lost his mother. So I think that this is one where I feel like it's kind of a smooth transition. Like with
Yeah.
Spirit, that is a great choice as well, where you do have the element of like a coming of age and a slice of life of an animal, which in this case is a horse. And I think like with The Land Before Time, it's another great suggestion. Like if you want to go from like Bambi to another movie that has similar themes, then The Land Before Time is another one to
Yeah.
check out.
I think that's good. All right, next we have South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. So I was trying to think of what is, similar and that I actually like, because a lot of those R-rated comedies just fall flat for me. It's like I mean, I really hated Fix last year, things like that, where I feel like they're trying too hard to shock us that it's not that interesting or funny to me. But I went with the Simpsons movie, and I think it's actually pretty solid and funny. And I think if you like South Park, you probably like the Simpsons movie. Pretty
Yeah,
similar.
no, of course. I pretty much took a little bit of a similar route where I thought about like what adult animated series that turned into a movie I would recommend, and I decided a perfect fit for this would be the Bob's Burgers movie.
Yeah, that
Because
that's such a smart pick because it also has the music element.
exactly, it's also
Yeah,
a musical as well. And even though I will say, like, the Bob's Burgers movie is definitely more tame than South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, it's still greatly enjoyable. It's still
yeah,
highly funny. And the songs are still fantastic. And
yeah,
keep in mind, like, I'm someone who hasn't seen much of the episodes of Bob's Burgers, admittedly. But
yeah.
even if I saw this as like, even if I went to see this as someone as a newcomer, I still greatly enjoyed it, and it was one of the most underrated features of that respective year. I honestly really liked it.
Yeah. So next up, they have The Adventures of Prince Ahmed, which I bet a lot of people haven't seen that one. But it's an incredible film. It's I'm not sure if it's the first animated feature film, but I think it's the one that we still have
Yeah, it's the oldest surviving
surviving.
animated
Yeah.
feature because there are a few others that were created but unfortunately were lost in time. Like there was the works of Quirino Cristiani. And
Hmm.
apparently, I recently discovered that apparently there might be one even before that that was said to be done by Pinto Colvig, who you may know as the original voice of Goofy. Apparently, he made an animated feature back in 1916, but it was lost. I don't know how accurate that is, but apparently that might be the case. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I've told you this before, but if I got in a pitch room with one of the studios and they asked me what do you think would be a good idea for a movie, I would pitch them make a movie about Lottie Reninger.
Oh,
Wouldn't that be a
right.
great story? And you could, especially if you got somebody that has like can you imagine if I don't know, someone like a Wes Anderson, someone with like a cool visual aesthetic, could work in the her unique animation style into the story. And I think that could be really, really cool. And but her story is so cool and interesting, and it's one nobody knows about. And so I
Yeah.
think it would make a great movie.
I don't know if I would go with Wes Anderson, but I feel like this would be a great subject for a Guillermo del Toro movie,
Yeah.
I think he would be able to pull off her story great.
Yeah, maybe we could have suggested to him. He's active on Twitter. I'll say it on there. But the one that I thought of is also an early animated film from 1939. I thought of Gulliver's Travels. This was done by the Fleischer Studios, and it's if you just want to see a piece of early animation like Ahmed, that's also kind of a traditional, fairy tale, but similar type of story as Ahmed. Then I think it's one of those pieces of animation history you should watch.
Yeah, I will say that I remember I reviewed it a while back, and honestly, I enjoyed it a lot more than I expected, especially with
Yeah.
Gulliver's Travels. Like, that was, like, let's be honest, that movie was meant to be a cash in of, like, to profit off of Snow White's success. Like, Paramount
hmm
actually asked the Fleischer brothers, hey guys, can you make your own Snow White? And they ended up with Gulliver's Travels, but it ended up working a lot better than I thought. Like
Yeah.
it has that timeless tone. It has its own kind of charm to it. It was actually a very sweet film.
Yeah.
I won't say that it's on par with Snow White, but still, I feel like it's one that is worth checking out.
Yeah. I mean, the Fleischer brothers would also make a really interesting movie.
Oh, they would.
Their story, that would be very
Oh,
good.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I will say with my suggestion, I went with a very similar route as you. If you're going to be watching The Adventures of Prince Ahmed, it's mainly because you want to experience animation history and you want to see like the early days of animation. Like you want to watch cartoons prior to Snow White or watch animated films before Snow White came out, which is why I suggested The Tale of the Fox or Le Roman de Renard, released back in 1937, in which they stated that apparently it was already finished in 1930, but it took some time in order to find like a distributor and have it be released. Now, The Tale of the Fox is based on the classic tale of Reynard the Fox, and this is actually noted to be France's first animated feature. And it is stop motion, and I will say maybe some people will find that maybe the visuals are a little bit uncanny because the way that the characters are designed, like, yes, it's very much like Robin Hood, except the animals kind of look a little bit more realistic. So maybe some people might be weirded out by the designs because it kind of looks like taxidermy coming to life. But it is still a very fascinating animated feature in a historical sense to see how they would go and create this classic tale. So if you're going to be getting into early animation, then The Tale of the Fox is another one to check out alongside The Adventures of Prince Ahmed.
Yeah. I haven't seen that, so I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's on YouTube. You can
Yeah.
freely go and check it out.
Cool. Next, they have Yellow Submarine, and I went with the Phantom Tool Booth. I feel like it has a somewhat similar. It's hard to find something that's exactly the same visually, but I think it has somewhat similar, and also has music and songs and a little bit of a wacky kind of sensibility. So that's what I went with.
Yeah, I could see it. I remember, like, it's honestly been
It's
a
more for
while.
kids, but
I will admit it's been a while since I've seen the Phantom Toll Booth, and I will admit at the time I wasn't that big of a fan of it, but like I could see like in terms of like the psychedelic elements,
yeah,
how it's worth checking out. For me, I decided I went with Pink Floyd's The Wall because
yeah,
if you're going to go and check out an animated feature in which it is prominently themed to one of the biggest music groups of all time, yeah, I feel like it's a nice transition to go from the Beatles to Pink Floyd, especially with how
yeah,
The Wall does feature many of what are considered like some of the most well-known songs from Pink Floyd, and not to mention that you also get a similar style of like psychedelic animation. Now,
yeah,
I will say that with The Wall, it's less colorful and it's more about presenting a message of like what these songs and what the movie wants to say, but it's still fantastic animation nonetheless, especially when it is brought to us by Gerald Scarfe, who
Oh
you
yeah.
may in which he has his own distinct style, but
Hercules.
exactly, like
Yeah.
everybody is familiar with his style, considering that he was like his style is what influenced the look of Disney's Hercules. So I feel
Yeah.
like this is another one that is a smooth transition. Like if you enjoy that kind of classic rock music, if you enjoy the Beatles, then you'll also get a kick on the wall, because it's pretty much Pink Floyd's equivalent
Yeah.
to Yellow Submarine.
And I do think that Interstellar 5555 I would also be a pretty good pick for this with the Daft Punk and everything, but I already used that.
Yeah.
Okay, so next we have Toy Story. And I was trying to think of a movie where a character's trying to get back home, kind of a thing, goes on a journey.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so I went with Migration. That I
Okay.
feel like people missed. A lot of people didn't see it or didn't talk about it or whatever. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was funny. It had a good sense of humor, and I just think the story structure is somewhat similar.
Honestly, I didn't think of the finding their way back home. Honestly, like okay, that is an interesting take on it. For me, I kind of went with the toy element. However, it's not easy to find any other toy-based movies, especially when let's just say the next one that we're going to talk about is already
Yeah,
taken. I decided to go with Transformers 1. And I would say that this one is kind of like a reverse Toy Story, because Toy
yeah,
Story, like it is a buddy movie in which like you got Woody and Buzz, who start off as rivals, but then eventually as the film progresses, they become allies in order to go and solve their problem. With Transformers 1, that is kind of like the reverse, where you got well, who we know as Optimus Prime and Megatron, in which hold on, I just want to go and remember their names, because like I know that they started off differently. Yeah, like with Orion Pax and D16, they started out as buddies, but then over time they become more than rivals. They become straight up enemies as Optimus Prime and Megatron. And not to mention that, yeah, well, technically they're not toys per se, but like with Transformers, they are known as toys. Like it's kind of like one of the main things about the franchise. So you do get a little bit of that theming as well, of seeing toys coming to life in a sense. So yeah, I like it's kind of a weird suggestion going with a movie in which its themes are different, or like they're kind of the opposite,
yeah,
but but the similarities are technically there. So it's
yeah.
like I said, Transformers 1 is kind of like a reverse Toy Story.
Yeah. Well, next up we do have the Lego Movie. And so I was trying to think of the core elements of the Lego Movie, obviously aside from the visuals. But if you think about it, it's about a character that's basically the chosen one, has the piece of resistance and he's trying to figure out where he belongs in this sort of repetitive world that he's tired of. And I thought, you know what? It's not that different than Aladdin's journey. He's the diamond in the rough. He's the chosen one. He's the one that can get the lantern out of the cave of wonders. And I think even like you've got just, like fun songs on both of them. Friend Like Me and Everything Is Awesome. I feel like are somewhat similar. Yeah, it might seem like a weird pick, but I think there's
I
some
will
similarities.
I will say at first it does seem strange. Even I was there like, wait, what? But the more I think about it, the more I feel like I can actually see it. And that's especially with the comedy.
Yeah.
And that's definitely the case with Robin Williams' style of comedy, in which like it can be very frantic, very like very fast paced. like Robin Williams' style of comedy that he presented in Aladdin as the genie, some could argue it has some similarities to Lord and Miller's directing with
Yeah.
what they have done in the Lego movie. So honestly, they're like it's one where I feel like the more you think about it, the more that I feel like your suggestion does make sense. Uh, for mine, however, I decided to go with the more obvious, like kind of like what's like what you see. With the Lego movie, of course, it features Legos, so I decided to go with another Lego movie. This one, however, is Piece by Piece, which is the animated documentary about the life of Pharrell Williams. And it's mainly because of how the animation style is very much similar. And the studio that worked on Piece by Piece, of course, they nailed it. In fact, they've actually had a lot of experience working on Lego movie related projects, considering that they've also done the visuals for Lego movie rides. So, of course, they were actually a pretty solid pick to go and do the animation of Piece by Piece, presenting Pharrell Williams' life and everything he went into, and just like pretty much present it all in Legos. I will say there are some, like I will say there are some indirectly funny moments, because there are times, like especially when they had to go and recreate music videos, and there are moments when they, and I know it sounds weird of, I know it's weird of me saying this, but like there are times when they had to present sexy Legos. So there are some like, so there are some weird
It was
moments.
an interesting experiment.
Yeah,
that they tried to
and
do.
I will say my one criticism is that it does feel like more of a commercial for Pharrell Williams than it is like an actual biopic, because they do present him as like a bit of a superhuman, and it's almost like the way they present his like setbacks or his criticisms, it's a lot like it's a lot like the criticisms you would give yourself in a job interview, where you try to present that as a positive. It's like, oh, I work too hard. Sometimes I'm too persistent at my job with what I do. It's like those kinds of criticisms that they present. But still, though, I will say Piece by Piece is a pretty solid animated feature, and especially with the way that they present it as a Lego movie, I think Lego movie fans would also get a kick out of Piece by Piece.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth seeing. It was a little steeped in business for my taste, about like the mechanics of getting a record made and recording. It was like once I got past the visual style and the unique gimmick of the like being Legos, it was almost like a little boring. I thought the interviewer was not good. Like didn't ask interesting questions. Again, we're seeing, but yeah, that would be my critique of it. But all right, next is Pinocchio. And I was thinking, what's a movie that has magic in it or something fantastical, but that's also about a young boy growing up and learning to love, learning to be a better person, good person. And so I actually went with Song of the Sea, because it also involves magic, fantasy element. It also is about a little boy that's dealing with grief and loss and learning to grow up and learning to love his sister, and both beautiful movies. Pinocchio is a little bit darker in some of its themes, but I think both definitely worth watching.
Not to mention that with Song of the Sea, like it's also a story in which like there are kind of like these chapters in a way.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The main character would go and encounter like these very unique and standout characters that have their own personalities, that kind of have their own abilities and stuff like that, kind of like with Pinocchio in a sense. Now, my suggestion, I decided to go with this is going to be one where it's a little bit like my Transformers one suggestion, where it's kind of like a reverse in a way, but I feel like it's a pretty solid transition if you enjoy the story of Pinocchio. If you like Walt Disney's Pinocchio, I think you'll also like Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio.
Yeah.
For me,
for sure,
I feel like this movie is the best adaptation of the story since the Walt Disney version. And it's mainly because of how it decided to update the tale and make it its own thing. Oh crap, I just realized, you know what? I made this thing harder for myself because I feel like with Pinocchio, like it's a World War II story. I could have brought this up in like some of the other places like Brave of the Fireflies or something like that. Ah crap.
Yeah.
But anyways, back to what I was talking
Yeah.
about. With Pinocchio, however, it's actually a more anti-fascist update to it, considering that it is
Yeah,
based
it's
in
true.
World War II, and you do get a lot of the similar characters that are present, but it's how Pinocchio tries to grow up and tries to understand life through World War II. And not to mention that it also has a great update to its message, because with Pinocchio, it's pretty straightforward where it tells you to not lie. But Guillermo del Toro and the team behind it, like with Patrick McHale and Mark Gustafson, because they're also worth mentioning that they've worked on this. But with their collaboration, they decided to make the message a little bit more complex, where it actually argues that there are some cases where it is okay to lie, where like it's good to tell the truth, but
The
there
noble lie,
there
kind of the
are
idea.
yeah, there are some situations where telling a noble lie is actually great in order to go and help out the situation.
Hmm.
So that, and not to mention, like, this is also another musical, and there are some like, and I will argue, like, the songs are the weakest aspect to it, but like they're not bad, and especially
Hmm.
the one that is sung by the cricket, whom in this case here is named Sebastian, is honestly a great and uplifting song. So
Yeah.
honestly, it does seem like a very different adaptation of Pinocchio, but still, though, it is a wonderful adaptation, and I'd even go as far and say that I think so far this is possibly my favorite Netflix animated movie out there. It is that phenomenal.
Yeah, yeah. All right, next is Akira. And so I went the sci-fi route on this. I went with Ghost in the Shell as my it's different in tone. It has more of a slower tone. It's not as wild and crazy as Akira, but I still think if you like Akira, you'll probably like Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah, I decided to go with that more action packed element to it, where if you like, this one is not sci fi, but if you enjoy Akira to see the anime style action and the crazy supernatural elements that can get like wilder and wilder and wilder, then my suggestion is the Demon Slayer movies,
Yeah,
rather it be Mugen Train or Infinity Castle. You're going to get a lot of that
good
anime
pick.
style action. Maybe
Yeah,
it's a little bit more stylized than Akira, but still, though, if you want to see like those supernatural elements, but in this case, this one leans more into the traditional Japanese style fantasy with onis and demons. But still, it will deliver like the kind of action of what you crave. In fact,
yeah.
I would even argue that my one criticism, especially with Infinity Castle, is that maybe it has a little bit too much of it, because that film is like almost 2.5 hours of that kind of action. And like I mentioned with you when we talked about the film with Infinity Castle, like I was exhausted at the
Yeah,
end of
it's
it.
true.
I mean, it's a great film, but whoo
Yeah.
boy, that was a lot.
It is. Yeah, it's true. Very true. All right. Next, we have Waking Life. And I did go with the franchise, I guess, the filmmaker. For this one, I went with Apollo 10 and a half, A Space Age Childhood. This is also from Richard Linklater. It has a similar visual aesthetic of Waking Life. It's also about life. This is from a younger perspective and his experiences growing up, it's very slice of life. It's similar to In This Corner of the World in a way, as far as showing like the daily sort of repetitive tasks that make up a family, make up a childhood. And I loved it. I haven't seen it in a bit, but I really loved it when it first came out. We did a whole episode of obscure animation on it, and it's one that I feel like a lot of people missed in the pandemic. But you should check it out.
Honestly, I will admit I'm not a big fan of Apollo 10 and a half. Like it was slower. It was slower for me, and I felt
Hmm.
like, you don't get that much of the actual concept of like, oh, let's bring a kid to the freaking moon.
Yeah, I mean
Like,
that's fair. It's more about the like slice of life kind of element, but I do agree on that part. Yeah,
yeah,
that's fair.
I know it has its audience. I know it has people who liked it. I'm
You weren't a
unfortunately
big
not one
fan.
of them. But I will say I did the same thing as you. I went with the easy route of like, oh, it's Richard Linklater. Okay, let's suggest a Richard
Yeah.
Linklater movie. I went with A Scanner Darkly, and and it's very similar in the way that it is another one where it's very grounded in reality. But I would argue that it is maybe a little bit darker because this one leans in more towards like the adult element, where Apollo 10 and a half, like it does show the perspective of like life as a kid, where you also got Waking Life, where Waking Life is more philosophical, where it's about talking to people, talking about their perspective of life, and you see like the main character trying to figure out what's going on, and then it's like, oh, I'm dead. Okay, well, guess I'm going up now. Whoop! And that's how the movie ends. With A
Yeah.
Scanner Darkly, however, it's a lot darker in terms of its tone, however. This one is a lot more grounded in reality, but it's also very fascinating because you also got some underrated performances. I mean, you got Keanu Reeves, you also got Woody Harrelson, and I believe this is so far the only animated feature where you are blessed with the presence of Robert Downey Jr. I don't think he has done any other
Oh,
animated performances.
interesting. I actually haven't seen A Scanner Darkly. I need to. It's the only one of his animated canon that I haven't seen, so I need to check that out.
It's worth seeing. Like I
Hmm.
will say, it's worth checking out.
Yeah. Next up is Anomalisa, and I was trying to think of what's a similar, sort of a dark, sort of more cynical perspective on love. And I went with Mary and Max. It's more friendship love, but it also can be a little bit cynical and a little bit. It's also stop motion and a little bit darker of a feel. So that's why I went.
Yeah, I feel like any of the works of Adam Elliott feels like a pretty
Yeah.
good transition. Like that, and also Memoir of a Snail. Like going from Anomalisa to that would work.
Hmm.
Anomalisa is another one that I feel like is a little bit tricky. Like I decided to go like in a more broad sense where like, okay, this is a more adult oriented stop motion animated feature. And if that's more your thing, then I'll suggest to you Mad God. This is an animated film made by Phil Tippett in which he spent decades working on this. Like, and I'm talking about not far off compared to the amount of time that Richard Williams took in order to make The Thief and the Cobbler. He spent like around 30 years in order to go and make it. But this one, however, it's more adult in the sense that it leans more towards the horror aspect than Anomalisa, that's more thought provoking and a little more sexual as well. But still, though, like I mainly put it there because like it is another stop motion feature, a great stop motion feature, and it does lean in more towards adults where it can have its own dark themes. Again, different than Anomalisa, and not necessarily as grounded in reality, but Mad God is still one worth seeing.
I hadn't heard of this one. This is new to me, so that's exciting. I'll have
Oh,
to check.
really?
Yeah, yeah.
It's worth checking out.
That's cool. Good. All right, next we have The Little Mermaid. So I actually went with Anastasia as my pick.
Uh,
I think the style of the songs is very similar. I'm going to, of course, like they were literally trying to make a Disney Renaissance film, so of course it's similar. But I think they succeeded. I love Anastasia, and I think that you could see Anya and Ariel as somewhat similar type of personalities and characters and yeah, so I love both of them.
yeah, no, I get it. Like Anastasia is one of the few non-Disney animated musicals in the 90s where it actually did manage to capture the tone that Disney established. Like I would say like Anastasia, The Prince of Egypt, and
Hmm.
I think there was another
Like,
one, but it kind of
like
slipped.
a lot of people might include Swan Princess. I don't think it quite gets there, but it's like,
I don't know. Like I know the Swan Princess has its audience. I don't know if I
yeah,
would like count that personally. But still, oh yeah, like
yeah,
Anastasia, The Prince of Egypt, and South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. Those were the non-Disney animated musicals of the '90s that they're on par with what Disney was doing at the time. But in terms of my suggestion, I went with a little bit something that's kind of goofy with the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. Yes, they're both
yes.
underwater features, just like with the Little Mermaid, but in a way, there's more similarities to that. Yes, you got the aquatic theme. Yes, they are. Yes, it is another 2D animated film that is very colorful and set in the ocean and stuff like that. But there is also that element of coming of age in a sense where like you got these young naive protagonists with Ariel and SpongeBob, and as the movie progresses they like there's an element in which they have to learn about like what it means to grow up, but also in a way not let go of that kid side where like they're naive and like they that they want to go and explore the world and stuff like that. So like and it's one where I feel like yes, it does sound strange to compare Ariel to SpongeBob, but more so than like the surface aspect that they're both like underwater characters, there are those similarities, and not to mention like considering that like there are mermaids in the Little Mermaid, and you also got like a mermaid with Mindy in the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. So
That's true.
so basically, if you enjoy The Little Mermaid, but you want something that's a little more silly, then the SpongeBob SquarePants movie is for you.
Yeah.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies.
So next up is Chicken Run. And I actually went with Over the Hedge as my pick. I was trying to think of a movie about animals confronting men, confronting humans, and with a similar sense of humor. And there's a sense of a little bit of a heist feel to both movies, I think, happening, or trying to escape, trying to steal the food for Over the Hedge, and the planning that goes on and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I picked.
No, I do see the similarities. I do see like the comparisons. I decided to go with another one that's like a little obvious, where it's like, okay, Chicken Run. Well, it's an Armin movie. I'll go with an Armin movie. So I went with Shaun the Sheep, specifically the Shaun the Sheep movie. And this one, I'll say right now, it definitely is a lot more lighthearted than Chicken Run. Even though, like, yeah, Chicken Run, like, it's a funny and enjoyable picture for sure. But like with Shaun the Sheep, like this is like next level lighthearted. Like this is like very bright, very enjoyable. Like I don't think there's like a single sad moment that is featured in that film. But at the same time, however, like I chose with that one not just because it's Armin, but also to like that style of comedy that they would go and deliver. Like if you enjoy Aardman's signature British comedy that they delivered in Chicken Run, then you'll also enjoy what they delivered in Shaun the Sheep. Now, this is another feature that is completely silent. Like, there's not much dialogue that's going on in there. But still, though, the humor, like, it's from the same people. So, like, you'll definitely enjoy that. And not to mention that there is that element of, and like, of animals versus humans, because it's about Sean and the rest of the herd, in which they go into the big city trying to go and rescue the farmer. So of course it's about Sean, so you do get a lot of those cute and funny moments of Sean and the sheep just trying to blend in with the crowd, trying to make sure that they don't make a scene of the fact that, holy crap, what the fridge is this flock of sheep doing in the city? So there kind of is that element where, like, trying to make sure that they don't face any of the wrath of the humans, kind of similar with Chicken Run. Or I guess, like, I guess on that note, we can also add in Farmageddon as well, because that also has that element of, like, animals versus humans. Or in this case here, you kind of got this dog alien who doesn't want to be captured by the federal agents. So
Yeah.
I decided,
I can
like,
see that.
so yeah, like, I would say, like this is mainly because it's like another Aardman movie, but I think, like, if you like Chicken Run and you want something that is even more lighthearted, then the Shaun the Sheep movies are the way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so excited for the new one too.
Oh yeah, same here.
Yeah,
Like,
I
I am
can't
highly
wait. I
anticipated for that.
love Sean Sheep. Okay, so next is My Neighbor Totoro. And I went, in many ways, I feel like My Neighbor Totoro is Japan's response to The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh.
Ah.
I feel like tonally, they're both made for like little kids to teach them about kindness and getting through tough times. And you have like you're sad. In the case of Winnie the Pooh, you've got, Eeyore is sort of emblematic of sadness, where in the case of Totoro, you just have the fact their mother's in the hospital and feeling sad about that. So both about kind of dealing, it's like emotionally honest. I think both films are, and very sweet and tender. So
I will say that with my pick, I'm surprised you didn't go with this one, considering how we recently talked about this a few times.
yeah.
But I decided to go with Little Amelie, or the character
Yes,
of
it's such a
Rain.
good pick.
There, yeah. Now this was this is a very recent, or it's
Hmm.
recent as we're recording this. But with Little Emily, like I mentioned, like with the past collaborations I've done with Rachel and in my videos, Little Emily I find to be the closest we got to a spiritual successor to My Neighbor Totoro, mainly because of how the theming in the feature and what this is about is extremely similar, because this is the slice of life of a little girl, or in Little Emily's case, it's about this 2-year-old girl who is growing up in Japan, and this is a Japan from the past. This is not like Japan now that's very pop culture influence and stuff like that. This is a very traditional Japan from the 1960s, and it's basically her trying to learn and experience life, seeing both, like, the pros and cons of it, especially when forming a relationship with her caretaker, which I believe is named Nishio-san. And very similar to My Neighbor Totoro, like, you do see a lot of, like, the wonder that's going through life, especially through her perspective. And like, from her perspective, you also got a bit of that fantasy element, where instead of encountering characters like Totoro, you see how like, life is just, like, wonderful and beautiful, and, like, often more colorful as well. But you also see some of the darker moments, like facing the presence of death, for example, where in My Neighbor Totoro, like, there's no actual death going on, but it's like the possibility of losing their mother. But with Little Amelie, for example, like, she would have to learn, like, like, how death affects people with the passing of the grandmother. So that's why I feel like with Little Amelie, this is a wonderful picture. I would even say pretty, like, even though it's pretty recent, it's pretty underrated, I would say. But
No,
if you
it's
love
really good.
My Neighbor Totoro, then Little Amelie is the way to go.
Agreed. I loved it. It made not just my, it was my favorite animated film of last year, but it was also the only animated film that made my top 10 overall last year.
Mhm.
So yeah, great film. Okay, next is Inside Out. And I decided to go with Orion and the Dark. I felt like this was pretty underrated. I don't know why they just put it on to streaming. I have no idea, but it was very sweet, and the it's similar in Inside Out. It's also about this is a boy, young boy, but dealing with anxiety and his fears and his growing up, and there's I feel like the emotions in this case it's like dark is one of, and then the other like fears that he has, so instead of emotions it's more fears, and so yeah, I really enjoyed it. I actually got an interview as well, the composers, so that was neat. So if you here on the channel if you want to listen to that, but yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, I would say that the absolute worst thing about Orion in the Dark is the fact that it was released on Netflix instead of the big screen,
I have
because
no idea why they did that. It's so bizarre.
I don't know, but Orion in the Dark, I feel like it's so far one of the most underrated animated
Yeah,
features of the decade. And
yeah,
since this is from DreamWorks, I would argue that this is legit on par with Puss in Boots: The Last Wish and The
yeah.
Wild Robot. Like, it is that great. And honestly, this is what I feel like I'm a bit upset that you already picked this, because it is such a great choice to recommend next to Inside Out, because in many ways it is like DreamWorks equivalent of Inside Out, especially with how they present the theme of darkness, similarly to how Inside Out presents what's going on inside the mind. And you even got like all these different elements of darkness that are personified similarly to how the emotions were
Yeah,
personified. So it's a great choice. Now
yeah,
this one
yeah.
took me some time to go and think about, because it's hard to find like what else can you recommend that is similar to Inside Out that's not Orion in the Dark. But it was only this morning that I realized that a good transition from there would be Soul. Yes, it's
Hmm.
another pretty obvious pick, because I
Same
went
director.
yeah, I went with not just another Pixar movie, but this is also another Pete Docter movie.
Yeah.
But there are some elements that I do feel like when you go deeper into it that are also very similar. Like, number one, you got the element of having the real world and also the fantasy world within. Where in Inside Out, you got the real world with Riley, and then you got the more fantastical world with what's going on inside her mind with the emotions and all the all the different lands that represent her personality. Those are very those are very nice and a lot more colorful. Where in Soul, you got that as well, but I would say that visually it's more advanced. Like, you got real life New York City with the life of Joe Gardner and stuff like that, but then after he technically passed away at that point, and you see his soul go into the great, it was about to enter the great beyond, and then it gets into the great before, and that's where he sees how life is technically created, or how a soul is created, and goes into this adventure with 22
Yeah.
as they try to figure out what is, like, as they navigate their way like into the great before, and then going back into the real world where their body is swapped. And this is where we find another element that is also similar, is that this, both Inside Out and Soul, pretty much changes the way on how you see life. Like, with Inside Out, it kind of changes the way of how you go and perceive what goes
Sadness.
into your what goes
Yeah.
into your head, and also discusses about your emotions as well, in a way that they can go and visually present it, and how they would go and personify it like it does give you an idea of how your mind works. And I'm not gonna lie, like I mentioned in my Inside Out 2 review, like that's pretty much like my go-to way of like thinking about how things in my own mind work. So it does help me out in that. So it really
Yeah.
does aid in terms of how things go inside. And not to mention, like, it's also a great help for many other people. Like even with my therapist, like mentioned about, like sometimes would use Inside Out and
Yeah.
Inside Out 2 to go and like
Oh, I'm
help
sure.
frame
Yeah.
to help frame situations.
Yeah.
And with Soul, however, that one goes a little bit more broader than just what goes in your mind. This one discusses about life itself
Yeah.
and
And what
how
makes a
just,
worthwhile
yeah,
life.
like how just, like in a way it tries to answer like what is the meaning of life, but in a more uplifting way. Like, and
Yeah.
I've heard some reviewers like Double Toasted, for example, like they brought up how it would discuss about the meaning of life and like what it, what could be worth living, but it's presented in a more optimistic way. It shows like, it shows like some of the good arguments of why life can be fun, why life is worthwhile, and that just, that literally just living, it doesn't necessarily have to have meaning, but just living in general can be a good and wonderful thing.
And
So
that every life has value because he's feeling like, oh, I didn't make the big dream. I'm not the jazz musician. I didn't get the big break at the club, that he's thinking. I just wish they hadn't turned him into a cat. That was the big flaw to me in Soul. I really did not like that element and that part of the plot, but it's still definitely a solid film, and I still enjoyed it for all those things you mentioned.
yeah.
Uh,
No,
but
I do get it. Like I've heard, like you're not the only one who has that criticism. That one doesn't bother me that much, and that's why honestly, it's like I would even dare say it's one of my favorite Pixar
yeah,
films.
yeah. Next up is The Nightmare Before Christmas. And it's another Tim Burton inspired or Tim Burton-esque project. And so I went with Frank and Weenie because I feel like both, Jack Skellington in Nightmare, he's just trying he just loves this. He's excited about it this Christmas. He wants to spread that love in a very innocent, sweet way. And of course, it leads to, disaster. Whereas I think it's somewhat similar with Victor in Frankenweenie. He loves his dog, and there's like a sweet innocence, I think, to both their characters and sort of their desire to love, that I think is somewhat similar. Obviously, visually, somewhat similar as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, like it is a Tim Burton stop motion movie, and I mean, yeah, sure, The Nightmare Before Christmas is not technically Tim Burton directed because it's Henry Selick, but like, considering that it is from the mind of Tim Burton and his style is so prominent in Nightmare, like of course with Frankie Weenie, it's pretty much the same thing, but it has a
Yeah.
lot more of his touch. So yeah, like I can see the transition from there. Now, I will say on my end, I feel like talking about Corpse Bride here would be way too easy.
Yeah, I felt
So,
that too. I agree.
yeah, so that's why I decided, you know what? Somehow Rolling Stones didn't put it on their list. I don't see it in any of your suggestions. I
Uh,
decided to go with The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. And I decided to go with that one mainly because, well, with The Nightmare Before Christmas, it is more Halloween oriented. So, like, what would be a good stop motion picture to go and check out on Halloween? So, and I know some people will suggest some others, like Paranorman would be another one, but The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, however, is a really fun choice, especially when it's kind of like both an homage and a spoof to classic horror features.
yeah,
Except
it's a
in
good
this
pick.
case here, instead of like a monster eating people, it's a giant were-rabbit going around eating vegetables in a village or in a town where they're having like their giant vegetable competition or their giant vegetable festival in which those are the casualties in there. And that's what
Yeah.
honestly adds to the enjoyability of the film. So
Mhm.
I was thinking in a way more of the holiday aspect to it, where like I know a lot of people love watching The Nightmare Before Christmas during Halloween, and if you love doing that, then you'll
Curse the
also
Were
get a
Rabbit,
kick.
yeah.
You'll get a kick out of the Curse of the Were
Yeah.
Rabbit.
They did have the wrong trousers on the top 40 list, but since
Yeah.
I was getting rid of all the shorts, I felt like I had to be consistent. So they did recognize Wallace and Gromit on the list, but yeah, good pick. Okay, next is the Iron Giant. And I went with the Wild Robot. I feel like tonally very similar, the visual aesthetic very similar. Um, yeah, so it just makes sense to me.
No, of course. I mean, like it's about robots, and it has a very prominent heart. So of course,
Yeah, yeah.
like it would be the easy way to get into. For me, I decided to go a little more different. I decided to go with another movie that is very recent, Arco. And that's mainly
Hmm.
because of how the plot is very similar, because you got the main character who is a kid with the supernatural friend that they would go and meet up. Like, yeah, it's technically the ET story with both the Iron Giant and Arco. But with Arco, however, I do feel like it also does work out with its own plot line. Like, as familiar as it is, it still packs an emotional punch that does work, as well as the world building and trying to discover more about the supernatural friend is an element that feels very fascinating. With the Iron Giant, you learn about who the Iron Giant is, or especially in the case of the signature edition, where with the added scenes you learn about like what is technically the purpose of the Iron Giant, and you just and like as we learn more about like what he's meant to do, the Iron Giant tries to go and define that, in which brings in which brings in Brad Bird's original concept of the movie of what if a gun doesn't want to be a gun. And while Arco himself is not necessarily a weapon of mass destruction like what the Iron Giant is meant to be, we still get that element of like we still have the element of like him trying to learn who he is, and like you kind of have that extra element of a coming of age story where like he ended up in his situation where like he kind of screwed up a little bit, and he kind of impulsively went like I want to fly, and it kind of messed him up where like it brought him back to the past, which for us is still like the future, in which like we and technically there is a robot also in there, in which we got the caretaker, who is a robot. So in a way, like maybe some would argue that it's a bit of a stretch, but considering how the Iron Giant and Arco have very similar plot lines, I think it would be a smooth
Hmm.
transition,
Yeah,
especially where you get something that is a little bit more sci-fi, but still about as heartfelt.
yeah. Next up is Wall-E. And so I actually went with a movie that I think both movies are about how technology can rob us of our humanity, but that love will still win in the end. So I went with Belle from Mamoru Hosoda. And that's basically both plots are have that element, and then I think both use music in a very similar way. In Wall-E, you have, of course, the Hello Dolly songs, whereas in Belle you have original songs, new songs, but that's all about connecting with love, connecting with emotion, connecting with, when things seem pretty bleak, is what music and love and everything can bring back some of that humanity.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. For me, since with Wally, I consider it one of the ultimate animated romance films. I decided to go with, all right, well, let's go with another one that is considered to be one of the ultimate animated romance films, Lady and the Tramp.
Hmm.
Mainly because, like, especially with the fact that you kind of have that similar like dynamic and chemistry with Wally and Eve, where Wally is this very he's very rustic, kind of like in the, a little bit in the older ways of like the way of life, where Eve is a lot more elegant. She's a lot more high tech. Where with Lady and the Tramp, Lady is a lot more high class. She's a lot more elegant. Where Tramp, he's a bit in the older ways.
Yeah, that's
He's kind
true.
of
I hadn't
like
thought of that. That's
a
a
little,
good.
a little bit in the, like a little bit more street smart than he is like intellectual smart in a sense. And you do got that romance that would keep on blooming over time, where like, yeah, there are some hardships that would happen in between, but it's about their love throughout the feature.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, next is Snow White, and this one was actually hard. I'm not that happy with my pick, but I couldn't think of anything that was similar aside from another princess movie. I just couldn't. I don't know. I couldn't think of anything, and I feel like the one that's the most similar of the Disney canon is Cinderella. I mean, they're both about sort of princess types that are that are forced to do manual labor and that are sort of there. I feel like they both have evil stepmothers that treat them horrible. They both have so I feel there's similar magic, similar. So yeah, I feel like it's a very boring, safe pick. But I couldn't think of anything for this one that was better than that.
I would argue that this would probably be a better spot to put Gulliver's Travels onto,
Mm,
because I feel like with Gulliver's Travels and Snow White, they are very similar, especially
yeah.
with like Gulliver's Travels' purpose again was meant to be a cash in on Snow White's success, but still turned out to be very good.
Yeah, I
Again,
think they were released the same year.
yeah,
Yeah, I think
no, no, no,
so.
no. Like, Gulliver's Travels was a little bit later. It was
Was it?
19. Yeah,
Okay.
it was 1939. But I will say,
Hmm.
beyond that, I do agree. It is very tricky to try to figure out like what to recommend that is similar to Snow White. And I will admit, I went with a very similar transition. So like, if we are going to go from Snow White to Cinderella, then we might as well go to Sleeping Beauty. Hold on, I made a little
That
bit
was
of
good.
a so yeah, I feel like it's the perfect route to go, and especially with Sleeping Beauty, when you think about it, it very much is like Snow White 2.0 or Snow White 3.0, if we're gonna count Cinderella as the Snow White 2.0. But the thing is that I feel like Sleeping Beauty is definitely the evolved form of it, because you do have similar themes, but the Disney animators at the time, they really advanced they really advanced their craftsmanship with what they have done on Sleeping Beauty. Like the animation is a lot more stylized. There is also the characters that have a little bit more depth. I mean, I'm not saying they're the most complex characters, but they did add a little bit more to the personalities of their characters compared to some in Snow White. Like you got Prince Philip, who's a lot more, who is a
Yeah.
lot more developed than the Prince in Snow White, and even like with some of the other characters as well that, excuse me, that are that have a lot more to them than the personalities in Snow White. So I feel like from there, like if you want to stick to romantic fairy tale stories like with Snow White, and not to mention, I'll even say like on top of Philip, but even like the romance, like I feel like even the romance between Aurora and Philip is definitely a lot more advanced than the one in Snow White. I mean,
Yeah.
not exemplary, of course, but again, still like there is still more chemistry
Oh, I
between
love
Aurora and
Philip.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm a
there's
big
still
Philip fan. I really like him a lot. And yeah, I mean, they're both masterpieces. But yeah, Sleeping Beauty is, I mean, every single frame is beautiful.
I mean, I don't blame you. I'm a
Yeah.
major Aurora fan. In fact,
Yeah.
like even one of my Lorcana cards I got, I mean, I got this, and I mean the artwork. And I don't know if you see it
Oh, that's
clearly,
cool.
but
Yeah.
yeah, the artwork is absolutely beautiful.
So are
So,
you team blue or team pink?
honestly, I'm more Team Blue actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like she still looks great in pink, but I think like
Yeah.
blue is definitely the way to go.
All right, next up is Fantasia, and this one is also a bit of a lazy pick for me, but I just went with it. I went with Allegro non Troppo, and this was literally a parody of Fantasia. Like it's sort of, so it's a little bit of a cheat, but it's a lot of fun, and it's a lot sillier than Fantasia. It's sort of Italy's answer to Fantasia in years later, and this is 1976 that this was made. But it's certainly worth seeing. If you haven't seen it, maybe you haven't even heard of it. We do have an episode of obscure animation on it. If you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out. It's a lot of fun. It's unique.
Oh yeah, and I recently did a review of the film. I mean, it is great. I mean, this
Yeah.
is in fact, this is a Fantasia parody that even Disney loved. Like even
Hmm.
the original animators, they were big fans of Allegro non Troppo. So I mean, like, yeah, it's an obvious pick, but it's like definitely a wonderful pick. And
Hmm.
that's why it was a little bit tough to try to figure out, okay, with a movie that is as unique as Fantasia,
Yeah.
like what can I recommend? Especially when we've already talked about Yellow Submarine and Pink Floyd's The Wall, so
That's true. And I
that's
didn't want to
already
do
out.
Fantasia 2000. That felt too easy,
Yeah,
you
same with
know?
me. I didn't want to do that. It's too obvious, and it like even I'll admit, not a bad movie, but it did feel like a step
Yeah.
down from
Yeah.
Fantasia. So I decided, you know what? Let's go and take a look at the Disney package films. Because in a way, their formula is similar to what Fantasia did. And I mean, of course, you could go with like Make Mine Music and Melody Time, but I decided to go with the Three Caballeros. That one is my personal favorite of the three, considering that like you got the like you still got like some songs that are featured, but I mean, of course, it is heavily themed to some of South America, but especially Mexico. Like where you do, and not to mention, you also get a lot of the similar psychedelic or surrealistic animation that is often featured in there. You've also got like one of the prominent Disney characters that is featured in here, like where Mickey is like the star of the Sorcerer's Apprentice, and in the Three Caballeros, it stars Donald Duck. So, of course, you also got that. So, in a way, it's very much like what you get with Fantasia, but instead of theme to classical music, you got set like Central and South America. That's more the prominent theme. And I mean, it's also a lot of fun. And I mean, I speak as someone who, like, this is one of my childhood Disney movies alongside Alice in Wonderland. It's just very enjoyable.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
actually, you know what? I just thought about it. Technically, Alice in Wonderland would also be a very good suggestion.
Yeah, I thought about it. Yeah, Three Caballeros. I also thought of Make My Music. Is very is sort of a more pop of the era take on that the idea of music, telling these stories and different things like that. So I think you could do that one. All right. So next up, we're almost done. Is Spirited Away. And the one I went with is, I think, very similar in tone and feel. It's Paprika, is what I went with.
Uh,
Whereas Spirited Away, you're dealing with the world of the spirits and the bathhouse and everything like that. Whereas Paprika, it's the world of dreams. But I think the surrealism and the imagery very similar. The animation, the music very similar. Satoshi Kon was such an incredible artist, and so I feel like if you like the sensibility of Spirited Away, if you like its randomness, I think there's a similar feeling of randomness of like you never know what kind of crazy creature is going to come up next, to Paprika because it's literally set in dreams. I mean, I could have also gone with Akira, but that was already on the list. I think both of those are pretty similar as far as tone and feel.
I would argue that Paprika doubled down on the randomness of Spirited
Yeah,
Away.
it did.
Well, especially with the fact that some people say that this is one of the movies that has heavily influenced some major Western blockbusters like Inception, for
Yeah.
example. So yeah,
But in a way, I mean, I love Inception, I really do. But in a way, Paprika, I like it even better because, I mean, really, Christopher Nolan's version of the dream world is pretty boring. Like he doesn't have any like Paprika. There's all these crazy, things coming out all over, like where I'm like, who? Evidently, Christopher Nolan, he just dreams of like buildings.
Yeah, yeah, like he went way too much in an architecture
Yeah,
mindset.
exactly.
It's like this is my dream. We're in France, but look at this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
Yeah.
but yeah, for my pick, however, I decided to go with. It's a little similar to The Glassworker, where it's not Studio Ghibli, but it's very similar to Ghibli. I went with Mary and the Witch's Flower, and
Yeah.
this is brought to us by a studio named Studio Ponoc, which is very much the spiritual successor of Studio
Yes.
Ghibli, considering that a lot of their producers and animators decided to move to go and create their own studio with this. And when you look at Mary and the Witch's Flower, it very much shares a lot of the similar themes and has a very similar style, and especially the fantasy, it's just about the same. So if you do like Spirited Away and that you enter into that spirit world that's a lot more fantasy based, then Mary and the Witch's Flower is another one that pretty much does the same thing, where you got this little girl who goes into this magical world, or in this case, I believe she moved into like this. If I remember, it's like going into this magical academy or something like that. If I'm trying to
It's kind of like a Hogwarts sort of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, if you do like that, that
Yeah.
fantasy of Studio Ghibli, like how they presented it Spirited Away, then Mary and the Witch's Flower is another one to go with.
Well, yeah, and the director was like an animator in Spirited Away. He was also the director of When Marnie Was There.
Ah, yes,
And
that is true.
yeah, for Studio Ghibli, so that makes total sense. I always just kicking myself because when I was very first, like I think I'd maybe done 2, 3 other interviews. I got the opportunity to interview Hayao Masa Yonebayashi, the director of, and I didn't like our messages got scrambled and I didn't
Oh,
realize and I missed it and I've always regretted it. Oh, I wish.
dang.
Oh. So anyway, that's my sad story with him. But yeah, good choice. All right, we got the number one. Fantastic Mr. Fox. I like Fantastic Mr. Fox, but the number one animated film of all time. Okay. It's a fun movie. I like it. But I went with A Town Called Panic. Both are very funny. Both have a similar like sarcasm. Both are stop motion. I think that A Town Called Panic doesn't have like as linear a narrative as because it's not based on a book. It's a little bit more sort of random. But I mean, especially every time the horse picks up the phone and it's his girlfriend being like,
Yeah.
"Why are you here?" That makes me laugh so hard. I think that's
Oh my
so
god,
funny.
yes.
So if you haven't seen A Town Called Panic, it's really funny.
I would honestly argue it, like, other than South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, it is the funniest animated feature out there.
Yeah.
Like, this is where it really made the most out of its randomness
Yeah,
just to
it's true.
deliver some insane comedy. Like,
Yeah.
it really is one of those movies where you just have to expect the unexpected and just go along for the ride. I
Mhm.
love A Town Called Panic.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, I went with. I kind of ended off on a low note on this one because I went with another pretty obvious pick with another stop motion Wes Anderson movie with Isle of Dogs. Now, with Isle of Dogs, I don't know if some people would say it's as good as Fantastic Mr. Fox because, yeah, like that's set at a massively high bar, but it is still a fantastic movie on its own, especially with the Wes Anderson style of storytelling And especially like with all, it's about all the different animals trying to survive in their own way and try to move, like try to separate themselves or try to make sure that they don't face the wrath of human industrialism, very similar to Fantastic Mr. Fox with all of those animals trying to live their lives, but at the same time try to avoid the wrath of what is it? Bonson Buns and crap. What's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
song again? How does it go? Bonson Buns and Bean. What's that?
Oh yeah, yeah. I haven't seen it in a while, so but yeah.
Hold on, I'll get it. Hold on, I know what it is. I'm almost there. I just need to make sure I get the names correct. Sorry, it's just been okay. Yeah, Bogus, Bunsen, Bean. There we go. Those are the names. So yeah, so like you got so yeah, like so the animals in Fantastic Mr. Fox, they're trying to avoid the wrath of Bogus, Bunsen, Bean. Where Isle of Dogs, they're also trying to they're trying to survive and try not to face the wrath of the humans who are into cats.
Yeah.
So in that regards, I think like it's a smooth transition and honestly a very underrated film. And I even dare say, like, I know it's a hot take, but honestly, this was my favorite movie of 2018. And while everybody was putting their focus on Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, I think this one even exceeds Spider-Verse in terms of its craftsmanship and creativity. I think it's a great film worth checking out. And
it's a lovely
again,
film.
and again, it's pretty underrated.
Mm-hmm. So we ended up covering, because we had 33 on the main list and then we each gave our suggestions. We had 99 films that we talked about in the course of this. And so what I want people to do that made it through this long episode, put in your comment hashtag 99 films, and then we'll know that you would listen to the whole thing. And that would be fun. But we want to hear what you think. What would be your choices? What you think of these different films that we've talked about? Well, I'll put a link down to the Rolling Stone article, so you can check that out. And love to hear that in the comment section. And thanks so much. This is always a thrill. I love getting to do things like this with you.
Oh yeah, this was a lot of fun to do. Like it was a challenge trying to figure out some of them, but like like just quickly revisiting some of them.
Yeah.
Like it was definitely a blast.
Yeah. And if you'd like us to do more of this, just let us know in the comments. And how can people follow you, everything you're doing?
For me, well, my main thing that you can follow me on is my YouTube channel, Electro Dragon 505. I also have a Patreon. If you want to go and like support what I do, like support my videos and get some awesome rewards, which is patreon.com/animat. And you could also follow me on some social medias, including Blue Sky, Facebook, and Instagram, and TikTok as well, where you can find me as Mat Brunet or Animat.
And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. Check that out. Also check out Hallmarkie's podcast. A lot of fun stuff over there. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. That really helps a lot. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. We just got over the 10K subscribers, which was very exciting.
Ooh, congratulations.
Yeah.
I also forgot, by the way, I do also have my own podcast, Animat's Crazy Cartoon Cast, in which you can follow it on that YouTube channel by the same name, or also on my Twitch, in which I do it almost every week on Animat Live. Just want to quickly add that as well.
And let's see, where was I? Yes. And check out the Patreon. That's another way you can support, and you can get some pretty cool benefits as well. And then the merch store, we have hashtag Animation Junkie, and I'm an Animation Girl shirts. So check that out. And thanks so much. We'll talk to y'all later. Bye.
See you later, dudes.